Well, what you have in front of you right now is my favorite weapon, one of them. This is the whole reason I started LARPing and hitting people with swords to begin with. And I never started to even consider making one. I always was too intimidated because it's such a big weapon, and I never thought I was uh, capable enough to craft such a beautiful sword and make it justice. And I had the materials, and I say, well, let's go on, let's do it. And that's why I recorded the whole thing, and I'm going to try to show you how to make it kind of in a blog. It's not a full tutorial because I don't have enough resources to show the whole process or show you the little tricks I used. But I'm going to try to give you enough information so you can at least make a decent job at it. So what we're going to use for this particular build are a few materials. There's not much to it. Um, we're going to use, first of all, for the core, we're going to use a fiberglass rod. Uh, I don't know how to buy this stuff normally. The only way how I find this particular thing is one shop in Barcelona, and it's 1.2 centimeters. The whole circumference, not the radius, the diameter. Um, so the they sell it in packs of 2 meters. So obviously it's more than enough for a sword. You actually are going to have to cut it down. The measurements for longsword are from the ground to your armpit. So if you have to take a measurement, I will say from if the tip is the floor and the pommel is your armpit, take like 6 centimeters off because you want to have enough room here in the tip so it bends and doesn't hurt anyone. And the same goes for the pommel. So at least 5 centimeters here in the tip and 1 or 2 here in the pommel. Next thing we're going to use for the blade, we're going to use yoga mats. They are super cheap, super good to cushion the impact. So they're really safe. Everybody use them, at least here in Spain. So this, like, you can get 180 meters per 60 centimeters of mat for €3. So with one you can craft like two of these swords. So you like this is the cheapest part of it all. The next thing I'm going to use puzzle tatami mats. Uh, it's a harder material than yoga mats, so we're going to use it only for the guard, handle, and pommel, not for the whole thing. Uh, to glue it all together, we're going to use contact cement. Whoops. And for certain parts, basically the guard, the handle and the pommel, and also the core of the sword, we're going to use hot glue. And to and to cover the blade, I'm going to use duct tape. And that's pretty much it. The most expensive part of this whole is the fiberglass rod. You can also use a PVC pipe, but they are chunkier, they are wider. Um, I think they are worse material than fiberglass. If you're on a budget, you could definitely use PVC. So now we're going to draw the basic shapes I'm going to use throughout the video because I never explained them. Uh, for the blade, it's quite simple. We're going to draw a rectangle from the tip to the guard. This is going to be our blade, and for the feathers, we're not even going to bother to cut the feathers. We're going to make this rectangle with enough room to cut it later, but I really recommend using a more simple shape when you are cutting a lot of pieces, because if you start making one curve and then another, they will be different at the end of the day. So it's easier to have a few squares and then shave it off so it's consistent, the shape, and you don't have to worry about having curves in your mat and trying to save as much material as possible. Just stick to simple shapes. It will be it will be the easiest part of it all. If you try to mess with shapes, you will get lost. This is much simpler, much more effective, sorry. So the thing I recommend, I'm going to use two pieces like this that are going to go on top and on the bottom of the core, but also we are going to need a few pieces where there's a hole here in the middle. From the guard to 5 centimeters less of the point, there's going to be a hole, the exact same measurement of the rod. So what we're going to do is, if we have here the profile of our rod, there's going to be mats here like this, and then there's going to be the top piece here. I recommend using enough of these pieces to cover the whole rod, because there are some people that only use one piece here in the middle or few, and then glue this whole thing together. What happens if you do this is that once you glue this all together, this piece wants to go this way and this piece wants to go that way. So this region here will tend to split. You could have air chambers inside your sword. So I will recommend having enough material here in the middle to cover the core of the sword. Next thing we're going to design is our guard. So if we're looking from the top, we're looking from here. If this is the blade looking from above, the guard does something like this. This is a space for your thumb, and it actually helps you a lot once you're doing cuts. There's a few times you're going to want to have your thumb up there. So the pieces are going to be like this. If this is the rod, we're going to have like 2 or 3 pieces like this to give it, whoops, this is way too thin, to give it enough thickness so it will last. Still, tatami will break. The guard is the part of the sword that will always break. Aside from the point, this is the part of the sword that always breaks. So actually, I forgot to tell you earlier, we're going to use leather scraps, sorry, to reinforce both the tip of the sword here and the and the guard, so it will last longer. Also, another modification I will do to this design is shorten the guard so it will last longer, because there will be less force if an impact comes here. There's less leverage here than if it impacts here. That's why I'm shortening the guard so much. Then for the for the handle, what we want to use is a few rectangles. Oops, here. And same thing as the blade, we're going to have a few of them here in the middle with a hole, so we can fit the rod inside. And for the pommel, we're going to do a few discs here stacked on top of each other, and then we're going to sand the whole thing down to shape. And finally, what I'm going to use is leather to wrap the handle around. And I think that's pretty much it. I hope you guys learn something new here and build the courage to build new weapons, because basic swords, at the end of the day, this is a simple sword but really big. So with this video, I want you to see that even though it could be taunting to build a sword, a two-handed sword, it's easier than it seems. Don't be afraid, do it and enjoy the process. So I will show you next the whole thing. Enjoy.
So as you can see, we've got all the pieces here. We need a total of 4, 2 for the middle part, enough to cover the fiberglass rod that will be the core of our sword, and the other 2 are going to cover up the whole thing. This is a very basic shape because we're going to do the detailing later. And for the dimensions, as I said before, I just had the privilege to find a Hema sword, so I copied all the proportions, including the handle, and later I'm going to do the pommel. So yeah, that's quite basically it. I'm just waiting to the glue to dry, and before sticking it together, we have to be just like that. You can touch it, but not quite dry. So the best way I found to glue all this stuff together is taking a little piece, dipping in. Oh, sorry, dip it in the can, and then drawing a line on the material, and then drawing the piece all along the surface, and paying close attention to the borders. So we have a even surface, and the borders are also tightly glued, because if there's gaps in the borders is where the material will start to spread. Okay, here's the final result. The 2 central pieces are glued with contact cement, and it's glued to the rod with hot glue. Why do I do this? Hot glue is really good at creating a strong and firm bond, but it's also very hard. So if I were to glue these 2 pieces with hot glue, it would be hard, and once I strike someone with this, it will hurt. So that's why we use contact cement here, because it allows the material to stretch and compress. But here in the middle, I'm using hot glue because the heat of the glue actually melts the foam here, so it creates a really strong bond between the fiberglass rod and the foam. So next thing we're going to do is with contact cement, we're going to glue a leather piece here in the point to reinforce the point once we thrust. Why? Because when thrusting, the sword here bends, and as you can see here, this is a weak point. Actually, I've put a reinforcement here with leather too in the point, so it won't tear down the material here in the point. But also, this piece will prevent the whole thing from tearing apart so fast. It will break eventually, obviously, but this is to reinforce this here bend, and we have to use 2 pieces, one here and one here. After that, we cover this whole thing in glue and put the other 2. Okay, it's finally taking shape. I've made the feather here. I've cut it with scissors. It looks horrible right now, but don't worry. We're going to sand it down to get a better shape, and also we're going to put tape on over it so it will look better once we're finished. So don't panic, even if you have like this horrible, horrible stuff here. It's not the end of the world. The same goes for the point. Be sure to have enough space between the where the core is and the point, so it flexes once you stab someone to death. Well, not to death, until they pretend they're dead. And now we're going to make the finishing touches on the blade. So I'm going to use a Dremel. I know there's people that don't have this beautiful, beautiful investment in craftsmanship. If you have something to buy a Dremel. It's the best thing I could recommend to anyone doing stuff like this. But the alternative way is with a cutter. I don't have a knife, but let's pretend this is a cutter. You're going to cut along the edge in an angle to simulate the edge of a sword. Once you're done, cutting with a knife or a cutter, even scissors can work, doesn't give you the best end result. So I would recommend going to hardware shop and buying sandpaper to give the finishing and sand so it gets smooth, and actually there's not splits like this, because something like this will happen if you try to cut the material. So cut on an edge and then sand it down if you have some paper. If you're using this beautiful toy here, just align it with the angle you want and gently go by. And also be prepared to have a lot of dust. Something like a broom will be essential, and actually get a place where you can mess the whole thing up, because there will be black dust everywhere. So I will get going with this, and once I finish I will show you the result. Looking good! Well, as I told you before, there's no problem if we have little cracks and failures over the piece, because we can always save them. We can always refine the shape of it so it looks nicer. As you can see, I sharpened the blade all along. I did the tip. That's quite it. One thing I tried with this specific sword is, once you use a Dremel, there's this dust that's it's going to cover the whole room you are in. So I recommend doing it outside if you can, and preparing methods to clean the whole thing up. But this dust, I think you can see it in my fingers, it will stay also in the things you sand down. So I took an old toothbrush and I brushed the whole thing. I sanded down, because when you use the tape to take the final look to it, final polishing, I'm going to say, the tape will stick to the dust and not to the blade, so eventually it will come up. So I got rid of that dust, and hopefully the tape will stick better to the sword. You can also play with the shape, with the Dremel, with the circular sandpaper. You can make a straight line here, and it will result in something like this. I did not do it with this one, because one, it's a lot of work. Well, not much, but it's work to do. And also I think with time the tape here will pop out, and it won't be as noticeable. As you can see it here, it's less marked than it's in this side. So there's something you can do if you want to improve more the shape of it with using this technique and not painting it. But as you can see, it's quite nice. So I'm going to start with the tape, and we're going to do the guard, the handle, and the pommel.
Okay, guys, here's a quick tip. If you have to design a complicated piece and you need it to be symmetrical, what we're going to do is fold the piece in paper, draw the thing we have to cut, and then cut it with scissors once it's folded. What this is going to do is make sure it's perfectly symmetrical. So as you see, I'm marking half of the width of my thumb because the other half will be in the symmetric part, and just making a slight curve as in the drawing. This is the best way to make any symmetrical part. Remember, drawing paper, fold it, and cut. Uh, Remember that the width of the piece, including the nick we're cutting for the thumb, has to be at least as wide as the layers of the blade, because if you don't do that, it will be shorter and your thumb will be under the blade. So be careful to measure the cut you're doing so the piece is wider than that.
Okay, so here are the pieces for the guard. I've designed it before. Here's the the paper version of it. It's made out of tatami mat. Actually, it's plastic. The plastic one is used for gym floors and stuff like that, and it's soft enough to not hurt someone, but stiff enough to get a few more blows than regular foam. And that's quite it. This is the middle part. It has leather reinforcement, just because I don't want it to break as quickly if I get a blow to the guard. And I'm just going to glue it all on and Dremel it to sand it down to get the final shape. Okay, for the handle we're going to use rectangles. The length of the rectangle is more or less the length you've designed, and the width, sorry. You're going to grab it like this, so once it fits comfortable in your hand, that's the width. In my case, it's 4 centimeters. If you have bigger hands, feel free to add half a centimeter or so. So the idea is to, with these smaller ones, these are like 1.5 centimeters, create a rail here in the middle so the rod goes in between. So we're going to do 2 of these and stick them together, and then we're going to glue it to the handle, and then we're going to sand it down to get in a oval shape. So I'll show you guys once I finish. Okay, so here's the piece assembled. Now we have to sand it down with the Dremel. I recommend getting rid of all the contact glue you have in the sides, because once you start sanding it down with the Dremel, the glue will start to melt and it will stick to the sandpaper, making it almost useless. So you have to be checking it and actually cleaning the sandpaper once you start sanding it down. So clean the sides, check your Dremel like every 5 minutes so you have a clean sandpaper. Okay, we are onto the pommel right now. What we're going to do is, once we've got the shape drawn, this one is from an actual sword. What we're going to do is draw a line in the middle, and then using the width of the tatami mat, we're going to draw lines across the new line we've got. So these lines represent one circle we're going to cut out of the tatami mat. To know the radius of the circle, we're going to take between the 2 lines intersecting the drawing, the bigger one. So this layer is going to be this long, this layer is going to be this long, this layer is going to be this long. But once we go up, for example, this layer is going to be this long, and this layer is going to be also this long. Why? Because the important thing is that once we've got the two layers, are two circles, what we're going to do is sand down this here. So we're going to stick various different circles along the rod, and then we're going to sand it down into shape. So I'll show you all the circles, and then I'm going to show you once it's all sanded down. And there we go. We have the basis of our form, and now we're going to sand it down to shape. We also have to adjust the handle so it fits nicely. But now you can see that it all makes sense, right? So I'll show you the final piece just about now. So here's the final result. Smooth out shape, smooth out handle. Now I'm going to put fake leather in the handle, and we should finish this up. And that's pretty much it. Here it is. I really like this sword. I think I did a great job doing it. I can still improve, but I'm happy with the result. There's extra steps you could do. There's people right now painting with latex based paint, but I haven't learned yet, so I'm going to leave it as it is. But you could improve even the garland and pommel painting like that. There's people even painting the whole blade with this technique, but I still have to learn it. So this is a sword that it's quite beautiful. I really like it. I think you could really have a really great time using it and looking at it. So yeah, hope you guys can have learned to create cool stuff, and see you later.